All right, welcome everyone to the bug triage meeting for the AWS provider for January 27th. Thank you all for joining. So I can go ahead and start sharing screen. Okay. Should be good to get started. All right. So I guess we can go ahead and start with open PRs. Starting from the top, I guess, so goal is just going to be to get everything currently opened assigned. I think that was the process we landed on. I missed the last couple, so someone can jump in and let me know if we've decided to change anything up. But yeah, all right, so starting docs, make omni selector term owner.string. Okay, yeah, this seems rather straightforward, just a miss in the docs. I can go ahead and assign this out to myself, and we can get this in pretty quickly. Okay, add link to Karpenter provider, Alibaba Cloud. Also seems like a pretty straightforward doc update. Yeah, no, this seems reasonable. I think the one thing we would need to see is just it updated to the other pages in the docs. So into preview, into all the different subdirectories for the docs. So it shows up for every version, but yeah, other than that, that also seems good. Unless anyone wants to volunteer for assignment, I can also go ahead and assign to myself and we can hopefully get this through pretty quickly. Okay. I think we can skip over all the dependency bumps. We'll just handle these. Okay, update the community meetings to include issue triage and working group. This one definitely seems topical. Yeah, it looks like Jonathan, you've already been taking a look. Do you want me to just assign this out to you?
Sure, that's fine.
All right, sounds good. Okay. 1.1.2 doc change. Yeah, okay, so it looks like there's still just one update that's needed. So this is just bumping all the references from 1.1.1 to 1.1.2 with Friday's release. Okay. I think I can also just assign this one out to myself to get in quickly today. Validation controller permission error check for node class. So is this the dry run PR, I believe? I don't know. Leah, are you on the call? Doesn't look like it.
Not, but
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, she's not, but that is the driver. That is the driver rate for the validations that we want to
okay.
run before we launch nodes.
Is anyone already reviewing this? I see Jonathan, you have a couple of comments. Yeah, has anyone already taken this up that I can assign out to? Because I also see a couple from you, Emmanuel.
Yeah, you can assign it to me. I think Jonathan was also taking a look, so you can assign it to both of us.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so Sarv is already reviewing this one for insufficient available IPs. Add option for extra hourly cost per host. Okay. So I think this is one maybe that would be good for us to discuss in working group if we want to have this implemented separately. I think this is something we've currently been planning to address with node overlay. This use case, because I'm imagining, yeah, this could be, the use case here is probably for like Datadog and other similar agents. Yeah, Datadog that have a per instance cost. Yeah, I think, Emmanuel, you were automatically assigned as a reviewer. Have you taken a look at this at all?
I actually was taking a look last night. I was just planning on actually asking the contributor here to just close this out and follow up with a node overlay, since I think that probably handles their use case as well.
Yeah,
So you can just assign it to me and I can ask them to see if they can just add to that to the RFC.
okay. Yeah, sounds good to me.
Cool.
Oh, not myself. Okay. Add sidecar volume mounts and extra volume mounts to all sidecars. So I'm going, is this modifying Karpenter's actual Helm chart? Yeah. Okay, I think this one needs just review in general. I mean, I see Sarv was automatically assigned as reviewer. I don't know, is he on the call? Just want to check if he's already taken a look at this. Doesn't look like it. Anyone interested in taking this up to vet the use case? Okay. Yeah, I can probably take an initial review pass then. I think we probably just need a little more details on the use case, but the actual review of the Helm chart change shouldn't take long. Okay. Restrict auto mount of service account token in service account. Okay, it's not super clear to me what the use case of this is, because it seems like the default today is still correct. But I guess I'm going to guess it has to do with anything else using Carpenter service account, but um, anyone interested in taking this one up, following up on use case? Okay.
One thing, Jason, I wonder, some of these that are maybe a little bit like simpler to review, do we think we should just like label them as like maybe good first issue isn't the right thing, but help wanted or something like that, where it's like, okay, we can point people in the either in the working log or in the channel as well after the fact to say like, hey, here's some PRs that we think are like relatively trivial, non-complex. You know, you can take a look at these if you're interested in starting review.
Yeah, yeah, I think that would be good. I don't necessarily know if that fits this one because I think it's less of a question of is the PR doing what it says it's going to do and more of is this something we want to merge into the project?
Right.
So it's a little bit more of a directional PR than like it's not necessarily the technical details that need review at this point. So maybe this is just a needs information label. in the same way we do for issues?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a bit of a, I guess, unless somebody knows off the top of their head, it takes a little bit of like a Kubernetes docs dive, basically. That's effectively what this is, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, I mean, maybe it's right to say like, you know, help wanted and then describe in a comment specifically what we'd be looking for. Just as an update from somebody as like a first pass, like that's potentially a path forward.
Yeah, and you're thinking once that's addressed, maybe we can then go through and do the assignment out to someone.
Yeah, I think it's really just like an informational question that we would need help with. Realistically.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we can do help wanted, and then yeah, after this meeting, I can go through and um add comments for like what extra information we're looking for. Sound good?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. We'll do that then. Okay. Um uh this is just one I have open for running E2E tests. Support providing multiple DNS IPs. Updates all Linux code paths. Okay. So yeah, this is one that I do think falls into that bucket of probably relatively easy to review. Just validating that this works for all of the different Linux AMIs. So Bottle Rocket, AL 2023, so EKS bootstraps. Yeah, at this point, this is just AL2. For what it's worth, I don't think this works in the state today. I think it's a little more. If I recall correctly, I looked at this previously. Yeah, Omika.
I just had a question, like, as I'm starting to get more into like looking at these repos and wanting to get more into like, helping out where I can. Um, what is our expectation around like unit tests and whatnot? Like, I mean, I realize we're looking at the AWS provider repo right now, but
Mhm.
this probably extends to the main Karpenter repo as well. Like in this one, I see there's like tests added and everything, but like for a change like this, should we be saying like, okay, if there's a PR up and there's no unit test to go with it, like, is the expectation that we should have a unit test for everything that gets added here?
I think so far we've done it on a bit more of a case by case basis. As a general rule, I would say probably yes. Um, I think there are probably exceptions for things that are sufficiently simple or things that should already be caught. Um, but yeah, for the most part, we have similar to the upstream repo, we have both unit tests and integration tests. The AWS provider does have far more integration tests. But for the most part, we're going to try and wait into unit tests just because our integration tests already take 3+ hours to run. So trying to keep as much in unit tests as possible is definitely the preference.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. But yeah, so like in this example, I think we'd probably want to see some additional unit tests to test that when you provide multiple DNS IPs, we should see that reflected in user data. And rather than just extending an existing test to check that the length is one.
Right. More than just the positive assertion, get some negative assertions in there too, or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is probably also another one of, were we thinking also using needs help for this one is open for anyone to pick up for review?
Yeah, that seems fine. I mean, the other thing I was thinking is we just do good first issue as well. I mean, either one, I think, as long as we have a consistent method.
Yeah. Think I think it probably doesn't matter too much, like you said, as long as we're consistent. I think needs help is probably appropriate. Or, yeah. We can always change all these. Wait, wasn't needs help what I just used?
Help wanted.
Help wanted, okay. There. Yeah, and I'll come back to these ones that I put help wanted and put any additional feedback in after the meeting, but just in the interest of time. And I think that gets us through everything. Everything else is assigned out. I know I have a couple here that I've just been pretty busy and haven't been able to get to. Hoping I should be able to get to in the next few weeks. Yeah, I think we can probably go ahead though and go on to issues at this point though. So I think similar to before, we're just good. Oh, I see something was in the chat. Okay. All right, so yeah, similar to before, just going through all of these needs triage issues and starting from the oldest, so back in June of last year, and going through and either triaging and assigning out or closing out if they're already addressed. So yeah, I started taking a look already. This one, it seems like did get to a resolved state. And so there is another issue here at the end, but it appears to be unrelated to the startup taint that was initially used. So I'm thinking for this one, can probably just request that they open a new issue if they're still encountering this and close out this issue. Yeah, any objections to that? I think actually, yeah, in interest of time, I will go ahead and close these out after the fact. I will just track these in new tabs. Okay. So Karpenter nodes go to not ready or not, go to not read state without AWS node group. Does anyone? Looks like Nick's interacted with this, but it's not on the call. I think we can probably just put this one in needs information and let it close out automatically because it looks like Nick did have some open questions that didn't get answered. So yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Needs information should automatically close after 2 weeks. I think that's what we have it configured to.
Or
4?
Yeah.
Oh, 2 weeks for life cycle stale, then 2 weeks to close out.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, that reset the ordering. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Stuck with infinite loop of waiting on cluster stink and abnormal time between runs. Hmm. Yeah, it doesn't look like this has really been resolved at all. Definitely still needs investigation at a minimum. It sounds like it was happening with 1.0, so anything is probably still relevant on latest versions.
We did make some improvements to the scheduling algorithm do, right? For 1.1.
We did. I don't know if I would expect any of those to impact like cluster state not syncing. It is possible though, but yeah, we would need investigation to verify.
Excellent.
All right. Guess anyone have bandwidth to investigate this that I can triage out to? And I guess one other thing we might want to discuss real quick is what we're doing about moving issues. I think what we had discussed in the past, because this one should probably have been opened in the upstream repo rather than the AWS provider. But what I think we've discussed in the past is, especially with these older issues that we're only just now realizing should have been moved, we're going to keep them in the original repo just to keep context. That sound good with everyone? Okay, yeah,
Makes sense. You don't want to confuse people and lose all this history and everything.
yeah. It was nice when they were both in the AWS organization because we could just transfer without losing, but
Totally.
yeah, to my knowledge, no way to do that anymore.
But it's a great point though, because now that we have multiple providers, the root cause here, it's like, yeah, is this happening on all providers or is this something that's AWS specific? So yeah, in the future, it's probably going to be really important for us to push the issues towards the main repo so we can figure out like, okay, where are these things happening, you know?
Yeah, and it is hard to tell at a first glance. I would say any of these problems with like the scheduler specifically, when in doubt, it's probably upstream, and at least we can triage the issue there and move out to the provider once we determine a root cause. But yeah, I think as far as moving issues goes, when an issue is first created, if we notice immediately, ask to move. Otherwise, don't lose the context.
One thing we could do is if we have like a special label for things like these where we know this is like a SIG Karpenter issue, but we don't want to move that, I think it might just make it easy to filter out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't. I like that idea. Okay. Yeah, maybe after this we can go ahead and create that label. That makes sense to me. But I guess back to assignment. This does look like this still needs investigation. Anyone have bandwidth to take this up? Not seeing any raised hands. But I guess what have we done in like last week for if we don't have volunteers, are we just doing like help wanted? Is there a backlog queue we're putting issues in?
Help wanted would be good. I think if we don't think it's trivial, don't put a good first issue on it, but help wanted,
Yeah.
like it intermediate.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a good first issue. So, okay. Yeah, I think we'll go ahead with help wanted then. And yeah, we can move on to the next. So VM memory overhead percent design is causing over provision. I'm wondering if this is already fixed here. Since I reviewed that issue, I can go ahead and assign myself to this and find out if it's still an issue. So let's investigation. Okay, no ability to set dynamic value for a cube reserved CPU. So yeah, I think we can remove the needs triage. This is yeah, this is an issue we've discussed, but I think we're probably good with not assigning out features in this meeting, but we can at least remove the needs triage. Sound good with everyone?
Yep.
All right.
Is this a good first issue by any chance? I feel like it's just adding like a new field or parameter.
Well, I think it needs design. So
Okay.
actually that's probably, I think we have a label for that, right? Because we definitely don't want to get into the state where it's like every time we need a new feature, it's just add a new field. So that's where, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a good first issue. I think this is something we've discussed that we do want to tackle, whether that's tackling it through node overlay or through some other extension to the EC2 node class. Um,
I wonder if this is similar to the VM overhead controller that was added, but now expanding to CPU. But yeah, like you said, this likely needs a design.
well, I think this one specifically, well, okay, I suppose, yeah, if you extended it to all resources, Karpenter could at the very least be aware, but I think the feature that we're really trying to get after is a way to actually configure it natively rather than relying on Karpenter detecting the custom values you configured through like your user data script. But yeah, that's where I think if either path is something we want to go down, a design would be useful to help drive that. Okay, ability to prefer, oh wait, no, I'm skipping. Okay, feature request, more flexible requirements for node pool. This Nick had some interaction on this. Yeah, so okay, I think definitely is a feature. I don't know if it's necessarily still needs design or needs more information on the use case. Yeah, I think needs design, as in we would like to see, the way I'm looking at is needs design is both a design of the feature, so the actual technical aspect of this is the impact on the API, and this is what that results in. Like this is the behavior changes associated, but also the section of the RFC that is discussing the use cases, why Karpenter isn't currently able to meet those use cases, and how this enhancement would correct that. So I think that's the way I'm envisioning the needs design label at all, or at least, yeah, let me go.
Also, is this a design feature that should be proposed against the Carpenter proper repo or the library repo as opposed to provider AWS, or is
Yeah,
this a
it
specific AWS feature?
no, this is definitely upstream. So yeah, this is maybe a little bit gray. I
Because
think
I feel like this is an area where we might want to consider losing the history and like just putting a link to an upstream, like because to get the best participation on a feature, like eventually we're going to want to land some sort of documentation in the Carpenter repo, right? We're going to, whatever the enhancement or whatever it's, right? So I think this is an area, this is like you said before, we have to go on a case by case basis. To me, this seems like a case where we want to be pushing towards, okay, yeah, we're going to lose a little bit of discussion, but we need this to eventually be an enhancement or something, right?
yeah, no, I agree with that. So if we left the issue here, we would definitely still be pointing to open the RFC in the upstream repo. But I think I agree, especially this one doesn't have a lot of text history. Moving this issue is probably appropriate. Um, yeah, I can go ahead and just in interest of time, I can do that at the end of this meeting. I'll request that it's just reopened up in upstream. Okay, so Karpenter not honoring / working with topology spread constraints or pod affinity. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to honestly read through this and see if there's. This one's going to be pretty lengthy to read through and review. Anyone have context on this that they want to share? If not, I'm thinking I have a fair bit of context on TSC related things. Given that Nick's was the last comment, I'm pretty sure this is needs information. So we can probably just put that in there for now and review asynchronously to verify that that's correct. Okay, go ahead and do that. Okay, Carpenter provision node does not reflect configuration. Yeah, it doesn't look like. Provision in EC2 Fargate instance. Okay. Yeah, this one seems like it's probably a user configuration issue, but needs investigation. Anyone up to take this up? Otherwise, I can probably go ahead and put a good first issue on this. So I don't know if good first issue sends the wrong message, since this is a user impacting, like this doesn't work for a user. They don't know why. Good first issue might send the wrong message there. Because it's not that it's unimportant, it's that we likely know that the root cause is user configuration. It just needs someone to go take a look at why. And if we don't have an assignment, that seems like the right issue.
I think like if you're gonna put help wanted or good first issue on there, I think just leave the comment you just said at the bottom, like, you know, like you think this is good, just needs a little bit of investigation around whatever. And then if we put like good first issue and someone finds it, at least they have kind of the discussion that we had here and say like, okay, we think this is what needs to be done next. That could really help out like a new contributor looking at this stuff.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. I think yeah, we'll go ahead with good first issue, and I can go ahead and comment again at the end of this meeting.
Yeah, like, cause I mean, like the wisdom that comes out of this meeting, like you and Saurabh and, you know, Jonathan kind of talking about this stuff, capturing those in comments to me is like, this is gold. Cause the next person who, you know, maybe wasn't at this meeting or watches the recording or something, you know, they'll see the comment that we left that was maybe like, we were just having some discussion about it, but it'll help them kind of figure out what to do next, right?
Yeah,
We want to always categorize things as help wanted, and then good first issues are just like an elevated form of help wanted.
okay. Yeah, I didn't necessarily want to do good first issue in case we thought that sent the message of this isn't worthy of time, but if someone has a chance to take a look, this could be a good first thing, because that's not really what we intend by it. But
Jason, what I was
okay.
asking was basically like, do we want to always mark things that need help as help wanted? But then if that we think something is a good first issue on top of that, then we also put good first issue on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and for just for clarity, like I'm not necessarily trying to argue that that issue is good as a good for first issue or not good. I just think more generally, like we could probably make good use of the good first issue, but we should put context there so that someone who's new to it could, you know, help out or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. I think in that case it was a good first issue. Usually when you see issues like that, it just means your pod's hitting a different node pool. Your node pool isn't configured quite the way, like you've configured it one way, you expect it to do one thing, it's not. Yeah, so I think it is.
Yep,
Yeah,
makes
okay.
sense to me.
Ability to prefer generation over price. It's like there's been a bit of discussion here. I don't think we have any. I know this is something we've discussed before. This is also another thing that I think there's an argument. There's a decent bit of context, but this is something that could be moved over to the core repo. Because this is basically a way of saying it's basically a way of weighted priorities for different label values, where in this case you are putting a higher weight priority on instance generation, presumably because you know that you're going to have better price to performance. So you may have to horizontally scale out less. I guess anyone aware of any like ongoing discussion for this in the upstream repo already we could link to? I'm not aware of any open issues, but I know this is something that has been discussed at working group a couple of times. Not this specific issue, but just this topic.
Nate, just so that I get some context here, was the discussion about offering weights for the different type of requirements that customers can put on the same node pool, because they can do that across different node pools today, right?
I think that would be one design space. Like, I think the end goal of this is basically to give Karpenter some mechanism to be aware of price to performance trade-offs. Because right now, Karpenter really just thinks kind of strictly in a sense of price per vCPU, but of course, not every vCPU is created equal. So, like, you would definitely prefer to be running on, say, like a C7 compared to a T2 performance-wise. You'd have to scale out less, and it may end up being cheaper overall, depending on your workload.
No, well, the thing that confused me a little bit is we already have requirements that customers can post regarding the instance generation, right? So is it more like they are strict requirements and we want them to be more flexible, or we want
Yeah,
more flexible?
yeah, I think that's where this issue, there may be some details in here about like the shortcomings today. I think you could achieve this through weighted node pools. So maybe it's just a configuration burden issue. Like rather than having, like, let's say you want to be flexible to 4 instance generations, like Gen 3 through Gen 7. I guess that'd be 5.
I just quickly
But
skimmed through that. I think that's kind of what it seems. I mean, they're already using like a different node pool with a different weight and the instance generation requirement to get around this, but I think we just want to start the discussion to make this configuration a little easier.
yeah,
I mean, I guess, like, there's also an avenue where maybe node overlay might help them here as well. And so if they can actually manipulate the price of these specific requirements with using overlay, that they could potentially also achieve that as well, since Carpenter may consider those I guess better instance types.
maybe without going too far into discussing the issue and not just triaging. I think that would be a lot of configuration overhead. But this is where probably needs design at minimum is a good to have. And then I think open question whether or not we choose to move this over to the upstream repo. Because this would be anything with like node pool configuration is going to be an upstream repo issue. Unless it's like pertains to specific details of AWS labels that you can put on a node pool. Okay. Carpenter not deleting node after scale down of replicas. So it looks like still an open question from Jagisha. So we can throw in needs information. And that will stale out if we don't hear back. Karpenter node claims stalled by EC2 launch failures. Okay, Jagisha, it looks like you were just waiting on logs here.
Yes, yeah, I was
Okay.
waiting on logs.
So, yeah, another, nope, that means it needs triage, but needs information. Okay. So Karpenter not scaling nodes when resource quota namespace is fully utilized. Okay. Seems interesting. hmm. So it seems like this is likely a feature request, but to have Karpenter automatically scale up these resource quotas, just skimming through. Jagisha, do you still remember the context around this?
No, Jason, but feel free to assign it out to me and I can go back and take a look.
Okay. Yeah, I think if there's any automatic scaling requests, I think that it makes sense to move this not assign myself. I think it makes sense to move this over to a feature request, but I will throw this under needs investigation for the time being.
Yeah.
Okay. Support automated instance store. Yeah, this should be closed, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jonathan, you added this, right?
You scroll to the top of the answer.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we identified that there's a bug on maybe older versions of Kubernetes that we need to track down that Emmanuel was looking at, but beyond that, this should be closed out.
Okay, would we want to track that bug through a separate issue then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm just going to real quickly try and track down the PR and link that, get this closed.
I can look for the PR while you can move on.
Okay, sure, if you can. I can go ahead and just link the issue in chat. Or I can try to if I can find chat. Okay. New AMI selector term for alias -1. Okay. Yeah, I think this is something we had discussed offline at least. So basically the request is rather than needing to manually pin to one AMI behind latest, have Karpenter support offsets. So I guess this would be kind of similar syntax to Git doing offsets from commits. I think this is something we had discussed offline previously that we don't want to support directly, at least because n-1 could be a bad, it could be a deprecated AMI, at least for AWS. We often roll forward for bad AMI releases. So if there's a bad AMI released, a few days later, a good AMI is released in its stead. So n-1 could get you pinned onto a bad AMI. I think this is probably, like, I see the discussion from like Steve Hipwell and a few other people, like a stable tag, I think is something that would probably be more useful, but isn't necessarily something Karpenter can implement. So I think I can go ahead and maybe add some of the context around our rationale for not supporting n-1, and can maybe close this feature out and then allow like a new feature request to be opened maybe around stable, but that's something that's going to still need design. There isn't like a clear path forward for that at the moment. Sound good with everyone? Okay. Karpenter overriding supplied EC2 class node class settings. Wondering if this was. I see this is referring to kubelet configuration. I know we had a bug in one of the earlier v1.0 releases with the conversion webhook that could result in kubelet configuration options getting overwritten. So this is potentially related to that. I think probably needs investigation for us to verify still. Jagisha, I see you were tracking this. Is there any additional context that you remember from this issue?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm going to guess this is probably that bug we had with the conversion webhooks. So yeah, minimally needs investigation. And
Yeah, you can assign it out to me.
okay. Yeah, if you're able to track down the conversion webhook fix we made and maybe ref that out here, and like we believe that this is currently, we believe this is likely caused by this bug, which we had this fix to. We just need to verify that. That'd be great
Yeah.
context to leave in the issue.
Yep.
Okay. Add metrics for the status of node claims. So I think this is. Okay, yeah. I think this is all handled at this point. We have our operator status condition metrics. I believe the dimensions are on them. Yeah, labeled by name and namespace. Oh wait, that's not one of them. Okay. Labeled by name, namespace, type, status, and reason. So yeah, I think everything's handled there. So I can leave an update after this meeting and go ahead
I
and
think there's maybe, if you want to ref, there's another issue that I recall. I'd have to track it down. I can make an update. That actually specifically talks about auto-genning the dimension labels onto the docs, so it's easier to track. Because right now it's basically like we're manually updating the help text. And that
Yeah,
not always accurate because it sometimes becomes out of date. So anyway, there's a issue I know in the provider repo I can track down. I'll just
Yeah.
post this
I,
up.
I take it that's just because these are operator package metrics.
No, it's because we just generally don't auto-gen the dimensions right now.
Oh, really?
Correct.
Okay, I actually thought we did. That's good to know. Okay. Yeah, if you're going to take a look at that, do you mind if I assign this to you and you can ref out to that and close this?
I'm just gonna close it right now, yeah. I don't
Okay.
even-
Sounds good. Okay. Will disrupt bad node, cannot disrupt node claim, state node isn't initialized. Okay, looks like I was the last one to be commenting on this. I think, yeah, I think this probably collapses to become this can be collapsed with a feature request for initialization timeouts. But I can go ahead and vet the conversations that happened after the fact. And yeah, see if that's the case. Yeah, because basically the issue here being that Karpenter won't disrupt a node that isn't initialized because it could just be very long like device registration. Like it could take 15-20 minutes for a device to register, and you don't want to just disrupt the node and get into a loop of constantly provisioning a node and then disrupting the node. So currently today, we just don't have a timeout, but that does mean if there was just some transient error on the node which caused initialization to fail, Karpenter will never clean up that node and it needs to be manually recovered. So, oh, this one's already assigned to me. So I guess we can go ahead and just throw needs investigation and I can follow up on this. Okay, clarify V1 migration. Think so I had done a rather large refactor of the V1 migration docs back in November. I can probably assign this one out to myself and see if everything that all of the updates I made addressed the questions here. Yes, Arv.
Yeah, I see. We have a few minutes left. I did want to talk about one particular PR. Is this a good meeting to talk about any open questions on a PR?
I think it's a good question. I think we're still kind of figuring out what the identity of this meeting is.
I think
What
it's
do you
fine.
all think? Yeah.
Doesn't hurt.
Okay. Sure. Shoot.
So I sent the link if you want to open it. I think we've had some discussions as I was trying to get some more context about this. I don't know what, like, I'm just trying to understand if we have thoughts here as a community on what we want to do here. In general, I mean, this is a problem that people are running into. I think how we fix it and how we prioritize that is kind of the open question. We could, get on with it with a short-term fix wherein we kind of add specific flags for secondary networking. If you just want to scroll to the top, maybe I think everyone can take a minute to just read through this, and or I could
Yeah.
just like.
What I think we can probably give a quick summary, right? This PR is basically just updating our subnet selection logic so that if we don't believe a subnet will have sufficient IPs for the maximum number of pods on an instance type, we are going to filter out that subnet.
And I think the way like a lot of customers are reporting this is, when Karpenter launches those nodes and if the subnet doesn't have any free IPs, it's basically a useless node for them. So this change will, basically prevent Karpenter from spinning up those nodes. The concern here, though, is that it might break customers who are using secondary networking or custom networking because they could still have a way to launch pods even if the subnet does not have enough IPs. Plus the fact that Karpenter can only estimate how many IPs are going to be used on the node based on the max number of ports that it can support. It doesn't really guarantee that those many ports are actually going to be scheduled on that node.
Yeah, I think another limiting factor is the limiting factor for like pod density on a node is pretty rarely, I think, the actual number of IPs that can be allocated. So I know like with VPCCNI at least, you have nodes with max pod values like well over 200. And often you're going to be limited by resource requests long before you're limited by maximum number of IPs. So my fear is this is going to be any solution we have that involves filtering out subnets is going to be overly pessimistic and is going to result in outages because customers can't scale up when they really should be able to. This is a real issue that does need a solution. And so I'm not arguing the importance of it, but I do think there's still open design considerations that need to be made about what the best way to go about it is. I know personally, at least, I'm not comfortable with the current state because of secondary IP, because of how pessimistic it is.
Yeah, I think the question here then becomes, I mean, this is totally a problem and we already have open issues to solve this. I think the question is, do we offer like a mitigation in form of an additional flag, or or is it just too short-sighted at this point and we just close out or reject this PR in favor of the open design for this problem?
I don't think we necessarily need to close out the PR. Personally, I think I would like to see a design doc, like an RFC.
Right. Yeah, I mean, basically like rejecting it in its current form. So do we just let the author know that we need a design solution to this problem first before we can take this PR in?
Yeah,
Personally, I think so.
I think that's generally how we've been handling it, is we'll just ask them to create a design doc that describes all the possible edge cases that we're aware of, and then offer to work with them either through the issue or on the Kubernetes Slack.
Mhm.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, because I don't think we want to default to just add a feature flag. If there is a better design option. Because I do think, for what it's worth, there are mitigations to this. Like, this isn't a problem without workarounds today. And although those workarounds aren't ideal, I don't think we want to expand API surface prematurely.
No, 100%. I think I'll just summarize what we discussed on the PR then and request the author to come up with a design proposal first.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we are at time. Any other quick questions, comments before we drop off? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. We'll have another meeting for Kubernetes SIGs, I believe, next week. And yeah, thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.